association and rebuilding that country with the entire Sudanese population behind whoever is going to come after President al-Bashir.
And President Omar al-Bashir, as we know, has been in power for 30 years. What do you think is likely to happen to him if and when he steps down?
I think if he steps down voluntarily, then there is high likelihood that he might be protected by the state. Remember, these are military officials who himself selected to be the leaders of the military in Sudan. Or another country is going to take him up, like Egypt, and give him a safe haven there. However, if he refuses to resign and is forcefully deposed, then he might be detained and sent to jail.
Do you think that's one of the reasons we've got this delay at the moment?
I think so. I think that is really what is delaying this. And my suspicion also is that the military council, which should come in if Sudan president is going to step down, does not want to have a Libya situation in Sudan. What they are looking at is a Tunisia situation, where now a transition council is put in place, and then the transition into having an election in the coming weeks or months takes place, and a properly elected president is installed, and that the country does not disintegrate in the manner that, for example, Libya has disintegrated.
So they want a peaceful transition there. Constitutionally, what is likely to happen next, would you say?
Yeah, basically the constitution that the regime of al-Bashir has been using will stand, will just be shelved, and a new mechanism in the transition council will have to be agreed upon. Remember, al-Bashir himself came in through a coup, and they've been using a constitution that is informed by the military itself. So it's kind of been an autocratic kind of a government, and there will be need to actually come up with a new constitution, which will take time. It's not going to be, it's not going to happen immediately. And if things move so fast, then a Libyan situation might arise because of jostling for power. I think what the scholars there and the leaders will want to have is some kind of an evolutionary mechanism towards transition rather than a revolution that actually, plunges so many facets of life in Sudan into disarray, and then the whole country disintegrates, which I believe the military council would like to avoid that at all costs.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, we're watching, and obviously we're yet to hear what the announcement is going to be. Thank you very much for your analysis, Dr. Mustafa Ali. Well, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir's career has been defined by war. Tuli Shabalala takes a look at the events that have shaped his presidency.
Omar al-Bashir is Sudan's long-serving president. He came into power in a military coup in 1989. Sudan was in the midst of a 21-year civil war between North and South. Bashir's government signed a deal to end that conflict in 2005. Another war broke out in the western region of Darfur. The Sudanese government backed a militia known as the Janjaweed that tried to wipe out the Fur, Zagahawa and Masalit communities. It was in 2009 that President Bashir was indicted by the International Criminal Court. He stands accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Despite his international arrest warrant, Bashir has made diplomatic visits to Egypt, Saudi Arabia and South Africa. In 2010 and 2015, Bashir won consecutive elections. His last victory was marred by a boycott from the main opposition parties. Under Bashir's leadership, South Sudan was able to secede from Sudan in 2011, taking back its oil fields that contributed 90% of Sudan's revenue. Nationwide protests started gaining more momentum in Sudan in December 2018. That's after the government announced that the prices for fuel and bread would rise. Added to that, there was some political turbulence within the ranks of the ruling party. Bashir declared a year-long state of emergency in February 2019, reshuffling his cabinet and replacing all state governors with members of the army and security forces. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Some more breaking news. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been arrested by British police. The police say that they were invited into the Ecuadorian embassy by the ambassador. Ecuador's government withdrew its asylum status for Assange, who has been holed up at the embassy since 2012. We'll bring you more information on that story as and when we get it. Over to Libya now, where UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is now expressing concern over the safety of migrants and refugees as the battle for Tripoli escalates. He's once again calling for a truce. Here's Michael Karanja with more.
Forces loyal to Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar are just 11 kilometers south of Tripoli's city center. Government forces have been trying to halt their advance. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was pushing for a ceasefire.
It's still time to stop. It's still time for a ceasefire to take place, for a cessation of hostilities to take place, and to avoid the worst, which would be a dramatic, bloody battle for Tripoli.
After the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya degenerated into lawlessness and became a preferred route for human traffickers. And the safety of migrants trapped in the detention centers has Guterres concerned.
I'm particularly worried with migrants and refugees that were caught in this terrible situation. I'm happy it was possible for UNHCR to evacuate one of the detention camps, but there are terrible concerns in relation to not only the life of the Libyans, but also of the migrants and refugees in the city and other foreigners in the city. And one reason more for us to believe that we absolutely need to stop this fighting.
As the warring factions dig in, more and more locals are fleeing to safe areas. Some have crossed into neighboring Tunisia. The escalating conflict in Libya has raised alarm in the international community. There are fears of a re-emergence of militia groups and disruption of oil supplies. Ongoing peace efforts might also be compromised. Michael Karanja, CGTN.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including President Ramaphosa pushes for inclusive society in South Africa. And over 800,000 people vaccinated against cholera in Mozambique.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
Serena Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
To South Africa now. In a bid to build on social cohesion in the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa has met with interfaith religious leaders who are developing a values-based initiative to encourage nation-building and societal renewal. The initiative will focus on addressing disturbing social issues such as unemployment, inequality, gender-based violence, crime and lawlessness, and violence against foreign nationals. CGTN's Yolissa and Jamela has more.
The engagements between the president and a broad range of faith leaders, including those from the African religion, are largely aimed at ensuring that these leaders form part of renewing the South African society.
Cloaked in their various regalia, about 400 interfaith religious leaders participated in the Presidential Interfaith Societal Renewal Colloquium held in Pretoria.
Although there may be doctrinal as well as other differences amongst us, we ultimately share the same values. They are consistent with the founding values of our Constitution, those of human dignity, of the achievement of equality, of non-racialism and non-sexism, and of the advancement of human rights and freedoms for all.
Ramaphosa acknowledged here that South Africa is a country that is undergoing societal challenges and assistance is needed from all corners.
Incidents of racism and xenophobia are severely testing our commitment to being what we have always longed to be, an inclusive society.
Interfaith leaders believe that societal rejuvenation and the positive framing of South Africa's national character is at the heart of South Africa's growth and renewal.
It has been our experience that once these issues have been identified and the root causes are dealt with in an open, frank manner, people have a fresh appreciation of what it was they were dealing with.
Nations are judged by its discipline and its character. And if the character goes and the discipline goes, the nation goes. We don't want this beautiful nation of South Africa to go.
We also are aware of the great natural disaster of climate change in terms of Cyclone Idai, which has brought poverty, hunger, and disease to our neighbors. And climate change, environmental sustainability, is a spiritual issue. It is choices that we make as human beings.
The religious leaders will meet in a few months' time again. That meeting is expected to conclude with a presidential declaration for societal renewal. The declaration will then be translated into a national strategic plan with objectives, outcomes, responsible persons, and timeframes. Yolissa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Mozambique has concluded a 6-day emergency cholera vaccination campaign after an outbreak was declared last month. More than 800,000 people have been vaccinated.
Since Cyclone Idai struck Mozambique, hundreds of thousands of people have been living in temporary settlements and without access to safe water and sanitation, raising the risks of spreading cholera. More than 3,000 cases and 6 deaths have been reported.
The population would be extremely vulnerable due to the damage to the water and sanitation systems. So the government of Mozambique put in a request to the International Coordinating Group, the ICG, that has a global stockpile of this vaccine, of oral cholera vaccine, for emergencies.
The vaccines arrived in the worst-hit city of Beira last Tuesday. One dose provides around 85% protection against cholera for 6 months.
So the campaign was targeting 900,000 people living in the most vulnerable communities, and that's in 4 districts, here in Beira, and then 3 surrounding districts of Dondo, Buzi, and Yamatanda.
Remaining vaccines will be used for other at-risk communities that were not reached by the initial campaign. The World Health Organization says cholera is a global threat. Experts estimate that there are between 21,000 and 143 cholera deaths worldwide each year. Chaumbono, CGTN.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ebola survivors in Beni are set to benefit with an eye clinic thanks to the World Health Organization and the Ministry of Health. Most of the recovering patients have been living with blurred vision due to eye inflammation.
For Centurine, surviving Ebola is a luck that she cannot fail to celebrate. However, the disease left a worrying effect on her vision. But she trusts the experts to fully restore her sight.
I could see they were there to provide treatment. They lit up my eye. I was not scared, for I understood they were taking care of my eyes. There were many people, including white people.
She is one of the many survivors who were at this facility for an eye check. The eye clinic was set up by the World Health Organization in partnership with DRC's Ministry of Health. Universities of Emory and North Carolina sent in eye specialists.
We try to help with vision, we try to help with any pain, and also preventive medicine is also a major consideration. So it's important for us to also reassure them that their eyes are doing well, but it's also important to discuss with them the warning signs of eye inflammation. Reasons like pain, redness, light sensitivity, things for which they should contact the survivor program and their doctor so that if a problem develops, then they know that they need to seek care immediately just to make sure that we can avoid complications.
In the 2014 to 2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa, it was discovered that survivors ended up with low or blurred vision due to inflamed eyes. This is what the medical teams are seeking to prevent.
We're examining the patients earlier than we've seen them previously, and so these patients may not have developed disease yet, so it's something that they need to be followed long-term to ensure that they don't develop complications or eye inflammation. And I think we're all still learning from the Ebola survivors and the eye disease and ocular complications.
Local doctors will be adequately trained to continue with this intervention after foreign experts leave.
In collaboration with WHO, we need to see these patients every month to check on those who have received treatment and to see if there was an improvement. We'll also be able to follow up from experts for those patients who might develop more complications.
Similar clinics have been set up in Mangina and Butembo areas. Beni, which is in North Kivu province, has been the epicenter of Ebola due to security challenges posed by militias locally known as Mai Mai. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
On to Chinese Premier Li Keqiang's ongoing visit to Europe. Premier Li is scheduled to meet with leaders from 16 Central and Eastern European countries in Dubrovnik in Croatia later today, Thursday. The leaders will also hold their 9th official meeting under the 16+1 initiative on Friday. The initiative aims to boost cooperation in such sectors as infrastructure, transportation, trade, investment and energy. Meanwhile, trade last year between China and the CEEC countries reached more than $80 billion. Investment in auto parts, chemicals, finance and pharmaceuticals between the two sides also increased. Chinese firms have invested over $10 billion in the region while receiving more than $1.5 billion from their counterparts. Well, the Pelje-Sac Bridge is being built by the China Road and Bridge Corporation. It's the first major infrastructure project by a Chinese company on EU soil. Now let's take a look at what changes the bridge will bring to Croatian people's lives. The main part of Croatia and its southernmost city, Dubrovnik, are separated by the Pelje-Sac Channel. Without the bridge, people travelling between the two sides must go through neighbouring Bosnia and Herzegovina at Nurm harbour. That route goes through 4 border checks in the space of 20 kilometres. By spanning the Pelje-Sac Channel, the bridge will shorten the distance between the two areas from more than 20 kilometres to just over 2 kilometres. CGTN's Aljoza Milonkovic travelled to the construction site and brings you a closer look.
After months of unusual spring drought, gale force winds brought heavy rain to Croatia's coastline, effectively stopping almost all the usual activities in the region. It wasn't too different in the small village of Komarna, where the local headquarters of the CRBC is located. This is the place where one side of Pelish's bridge will be situated. It is a massive and crucially important project for this Balkan nation.
Regardless of torrential rain and strong winds, works here on the construction site of the Pelish's bridge continue. And although they've started some 8 months ago, estimates say that they are almost full month ahead of schedule.
Pelish's bridge is just over 2.4 kilometers long, with pylons rising to 170 meters above the sea level. It will host 4 lanes in total, and the longest span between the 2 pylons will be almost 570 meters. A truly remarkable achievement for this part of Europe. But not just for them. Since the CRBC has never worked before on a project of this scale in Europe, this is a great experience for the company too, providing a very important learning curve.
Since CRBC is an international company, we always build in line with international standards. Therefore, we've employed many local engineers to devote to the project. I think, on the other hand, we need to bring our mature experience of building bridges at home to here. And on the other hand, we need to make more friends worldwide to jointly strive for excellence in the current project.
The Croatian side admits that teething problems with the project existed, but now they are firmly in the past.
If, in the beginning, we had some misunderstandings regarding who can do what regarding the projects here, it has been resolved, and now everything is going smoothly.
85% of the $380 million investment used to fund the Pelish's bridge is financed by the EU, while the remaining 15% is provided by the Croatian government. Chinese CRBC won the international tender over 3 competitors, and it promises that they'll finish their work on time in the year 2022. And this contract has certainly helped Croatia's bid to host this year's 16+1 meeting.
The signing of the construction of the Pelish's bridge, which is a strategic infrastructure project for Croatia, and the fact that the tender has been won by the China Bridge and Road Corporation was certainly an incentive that this decision takes place.
It is expected that ahead of the meeting, both the Chinese Premier and Croatian Prime Minister will visit the construction site. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Komarna in the south of Croatia.
Updating you on our breaking story now. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been arrested by British police. The police say they were invited into the Ecuadorian embassy by the ambassador. Ecuador's government withdrew its asylum status for Assange, who has been holed up at the embassy since 2012 after releasing reams of secret documents that embarrassed the United States government. President Lenin Moreno of Ecuador said on Twitter that his country had taken the decision to revoke the asylum status that it had granted to Mr. Assange after his repeated violations to international conventions and daily life protocols, a decision that cleared the way for the British authorities to detain him. We'll bring you more information on that story as and when we get it. We are going to a short break now. We've got all the business news coming up, including European Union leaders agree to grant the UK a new Brexit deadline of October the 31st. And World Travel Market Africa Summit kicks off in Cape Town, South Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The European Union has extended the deadline for Britain to leave the Union to October the 31st. The new date means the UK is unlikely to leave the EU on Friday. That was the original date. Theresa May's push for a delay is a compromise, since many European leaders favoured a delay for up to a year. But France's president wanted a Brexit deadline in June. Mariam Zaidi has more from the EU capital.
Trick or treat. The 31st of October, Halloween. Mark that in your diaries. This is the new date for Brexit. The European Union have now granted the UK a considerable extension to Article 50. But getting here, well, that took hours. The mood was calm, knife-friendly. Leader after leader walked the red carpet, but it was unknown what Brexit path they would set the UK down on. Despite calling for a delay till June the 30th, it seemed all Theresa May wanted was time.
The purpose of this summit is to agree an extension which gives us more time to agree a deal to enable us to leave the EU in that smooth and orderly way.
Just ahead of the latest in a growing line of emergency Brexit summits, EU Council President Donald Tusk had called for a one-year flexible extension, or as he called it, a flextension. But cue a thorny French President Emmanuel Macron.
For me, nothing should be taken for granted, especially not a long extension. We must understand why they're asking for that. How do they justify it?
And MEPs agreed. They wanted ironclad guarantees that a member state on the way out would not cause disruption.
We expect you to keep abiding by the treaty, and that includes this principle of sincere cooperation. So if you are here obviously to filibuster, to torpedo European decision making, you will be basically not fulfilling your legal obligations under the treaty.
Talks between Theresa May and her 27 EU counterparts lasted an hour. But as the hours began to pass, it seems an impasse had been caused by Emmanuel Macron. He wanted the UK gone sooner rather than later. Weary eyes welcomed a confirmation just before 2 a.m. October 31st was a go, but it came with a special message for the UK.
This extension is as flexible as I expected and a little bit shorter than I expected, but it's still enough to find the best possible solution. Please do not waste this time.
Theresa May wasn't only successful in getting an extension, she got even more than she came here to bargain for, an extra 4 months. She may well spin this as sensible, plus of course there's that built-in review in June, so there's still a chance the UK could get out before October. But a longer than wanted extension to Brexit may well provoke a furious backlash back home for the UK Prime Minister. Mariam Zaidi, CGTN, Brussels.
Thousands of travel industry professionals are in Cape Town for the annual World Travel Market Africa event. Besides exchanging ideas on the latest trends in the industry, they're also showcasing the latest tourism products from across the African continent. Rennie Delcam reports.
World Travel Market Africa is aimed at the business market, communicating and connecting travel across the continent and beyond. This year, there are over 200 speakers, with highlights such as a Women in Tourism meetup, Responsible Tourism Awards, and an African Tourism Investment Summit.
It's looking at what we need to invest in beyond just hotels and the traditional tourism products. So whether it's airstrips, it can be your road infrastructure. We're really excited this year. We've got the Indian Ocean Islands in attendance, so we've got Reunion, we've got the Maldives, Seychelles, and then we also look further abroad. We've got Indonesia, Thailand, so some really great international guys that are attending too.
There's an increased focus on niche tourism this year, from spa and wellness to food and wine tourism, as well as digital, sports and adventure tourism.
The African continent has something to offer for everyone. It's got the wildlife, it's got the oceans, it's got the scenery, the mountains. If you go up to Kenya, you can go and visit the Maasai. Cultural and heritage tourism is rich. Food, wine, we've got it all. So who wouldn't want to travel to Africa?
Exhibitors are serious about doing business and all also proud to share the rich cultural diversity Africa has to offer.
Our tourists demonstrate about what we are, and we need them to come and visit us so they can learn what we eat, what we are, dancing, everything. We need more to them to come. So that's why I'm here today. For this week, for me, that I'll be happy because I can say that I'm getting a lot of business out of this.
The three-day WTM Africa 2019 event ends in South Africa's mother city of Cape Town on Friday. Renee Delcalm, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Equatorial Guinea has designated 2019 as the Year of Energy. The goal, according to the Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons, is to position the country as the energy capital of Africa. Angelo Coppola caught up with him during a recent trip to South Africa.
So, Minister, you've just announced a new licensing round. Tell us a little bit about it. What's the thinking behind it?
There are going to be a total of 26 blocks. 2 of them are the ones that have discoveries. One of them is well known, is the former block of Ophir, that they have the Fortuna discovery. Now it's very good because what it does is that the companies who actually bid for that, they will be able to bid not just for the exploration, but also we need to prepare a budget for development. Other reason there is a special license round is because it's also going to be a joint with the mining round. So it will be a first ever mining round. So the difference is that what we are focused on this stage in the mining sector is the exploration. It's for them to do geological studies, some drilling, and by that time in 1 year we'll be able to have enough information to go into specific areas.
Now, Equatorial Guinea is a member of OPEC, and there's always this misconception that OPEC is trying to control and manage prices by tapping into supply and demand. What are your thoughts around that?
At this moment, Equatorial Guinea is a member of OPEC, and there is a misconception about controlling the price. What all the OPEC members want is stability of price. We don't like volatility, because when you have volatility, it's difficult for countries to be able to have a long-term sustainable development, because you need to change the budget every day. Now, there is many geopolitical matters that are really out of the control of OPEC. We have the Venezuela situation, we have the Iran situation, now we have Libya, then Algeria is coming in a situation, and also there is issues regarding the consumers. You have China. It was a very big growing economy. Right now, it is growing, but not at the same level.
The gas mega hub that you're talking about at the moment, give us a bit more information there. What's the thinking behind it?
Right now, if you have a stranded gas discovery, if you think about doing an LNG plant or you're thinking about doing floating LNG, you start as a minimum price tag of $2 billion. But now, if you think that I will bring it to the asset in Equatorial Guinea, we are talking about probably no more than 120 millions. So you could see the math is there and the economics is there. So it's actually more enticing economically to bring it to our installation there. So the key thing for us is to do things step by steps.
We're going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including restored giant statue of Ramses II unveiled in Egypt's Sohag region.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Egypt is once again making big strides in the world of archaeology. This follows the restoration and unveiling of a giant statue of King Ramses II. The ancient ruler is widely regarded as the greatest pharaoh of the North African nation. Here's Laura Wanabengo with more.
Standing 12 meters high in Sohag Governorate and weighing a whopping 45 tons, this giant statue of Ramses II comes as a crowning moment for Egypt's archaeology. It was restored from 70 different parts that were scattered across the northern regions for centuries. A worthy achievement that authorities don't shy away from celebrating.
It is very important for publicity. This is because today the whole world will talk about another area in Sohag Governorate. That is why the Ministry of Antiques organized this event for the world to see this beauty. People don't believe this. Some Egyptians ask me, is Sohag really this beautiful?
Restoration was entirely undertaken by Egyptian archaeologists. Ramses II reigned as the Pharaoh of Egypt over 3,000 years ago. He is regarded as the greatest ruler, under whose leadership Egypt expanded its territory into the Levant and Nuba. Another event that is also being celebrated is the excavation of the Temple of Athribis.
This is the very last temple which was not excavated up to now. All the others were excavated about 100 years ago, and of course the excavation practice was very different from today.
10 kilometers away, modern technology has been employed in lowering water levels at yet another site. This has allowed tourists to access the Osirian tombs. Until now, these tombs lay 3 meters deep underwater. Experts from German University of Tübingen helped in achieving this. With these and previous discoveries, Egypt continues to stand tall as one of the pillars of archaeology in the world. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
To Tunisia now, where over 20,000 visitors have attended the International Book Fair in the capital, Tunis. It's one of the oldest and largest book fairs in North Africa, where writers and publishing houses can come together to keep alive book reading. Chinese publishers are introducing books that have been translated into French or Arabic to help Tunisians learn more about China's past and present. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi reports.
The 35th edition of the International Book Fair of Tunis has opened at the Convention Center, north of the capital city. 319 publishing houses from 24 countries, including 116 Arab, African and international exhibitors, are partaking in the book fair. It is considered as one of the most important cultural events of the year in the North African state.
This is our 4th participation as a publishing house. We are selling stories and sources of inspiration, not pepper. There is a great demand for books. This is unbelievable. I thought that people no longer read.
Imen organizes workshops for children. She spends several hours reading, then explaining tales to young boys and girls. Rewriting the stories and acting is one of the favorite and most attractive activities at the book fair.
Reading, creating scenes from the tales, then acting in a public space is an extraordinary exercise. Children nurture their imagination and increase book attractiveness.
Some people have come from distant towns and cities to partake in workshops and to buy new books.
I have traveled for 300 kilometers to attend this workshop and to buy books from the fair. I'm passionate about reading. I'm discovering the world through books.
The stand of the Chinese Cultural Center in Tunisia here at the 35th edition of the Tunis International Book Fair has attracted visitors of all ages and social classes. Tens of books on Chinese culture, language and civilization, as well as 6 Chinese legends written by prominent writers, are at display at this stand.
The Chinese legends talk about universal values. They are translated from Mandarin to Arabic by university teachers and students. Tunisians love Chinese culture and read Chinese books to discover this great civilization.
Over 20,000 people have attended the book fair. The Ministry of Culture is expecting at least 15,000 additional visitors in the next few days. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, we've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Mamelodi Sundowns touched down in Egypt ahead of their second leg quarter-final match against al-Ahli.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.